Hi, everyone. Thank y'all for joining us for our Beef Brunch news update on Tuesday, August 17th. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Vince for our update in Central and South Louisiana.
Thank y'all for having me this week. Central and South Louisiana, we've had a break from our monsoonal spring and early summer rains. We've pretty much dried out, and most hay producers have had an opportunity to get the big rank gorilla hay out. So yields were big, um, but the armyworms have been very prolific and taken over what any new growth has come about since this first cutting has come off. So the battle goes on with armyworms, and there were a number of people spraying over the last 7 to 10 days, with some not aware of the pyrethroids not effectively taking control of some of those species of armyworms out there. Um, some that we were able to make contact with are making that tank mix of a pyrethroid and or with the Dimolin or the Dimolin generics, and that seems to be working. Intrepid is another one that has given some relief, but when used to using pyrethroids, they used to contact kill and a quick resolution to the issue. But the birds are indicators that they're still having issues, and it seems to go on for 3 to 5 days following the application. So there is some concern, and as we spoke to just prior to the coming to airing this update, they want quick results and don't want to spend no more money than they need to. So it's a dragging event. So our temperatures, our weather forecast again is 40, 50, 60% over the weekend. We had 2 80% days and no rain, which I guess is a good thing in most cases, but we're getting to a point where some of our pastures and hay fields could use that rain with $600 urea prices or nearing. We need to be more as efficient as possible as getting those urea applications out or any nitrogen or complete fertilizer blends out with some rainfall. So to ensure that next cutting, and here we are mid-August, so it's imperative that we do things efficiently and effectively to make that next cutting. But horn flies are still pretty prolific, and we've had a few producers pinning cattle and putting ear tags on to last the duration of the summer. Had a number of calls regarding some of the fly and the IGR minerals not giving the control that they've seen in the past. So the insect issues, whether it's armyworms or horn flies, seems to be an undaunting task here to try to manage those. But those things are going to be a year in, year out thing that we manage. I know Jason's going to cover the markets, but here locally in central part of Louisiana, the processing cows, kill cows, if you would, are still, high yielding cows are still in the 70s, from 68 to 72. High yielding bulls are, 98 to $1.02. The better cattle, feeder calf wise, we hitting that $1.50 to $1.60 mark in some cases. Again, the plainer cattle is where we hear the complaints from, that, the price is not as solid as some of the better cattle. So, but cattle in generally in good shape. As Lee alluded to, over the spring and summer, our pastures are in good shape. We've got plenty of forage out there. Cattle are in good shape here. But moving into the fall, rye grass prices become an issue. We saw some updates from Dr. Twidwell today out of Oregon. The potential shortage of seed. Talked to a couple of distributors that usually get rail cars in and have those in place by now. They actually had to send crews to load the cars in Oregon, get their crews back to South Louisiana to unload them. So the shortage of labor is hard felt across the country. So that price increase is not only going to be because of the shortage of seed, it's going to be because of shortage of labor and what's going into it. So can anticipate some expensive ryegrass plantings if you intend to do so, with fertilizer prices at nearing not all-time highs, because back in 2011, 2012, we saw $1,200 urea. So we're not at that point yet, but it's going to be expensive. So it's going to be imperative that we manage and do the best we can with what we have to deal with. It might be a good time to take advantage of some of those good cow prices if they're not working for you. So that's about all I have right here for the central region. we're in the heart of the rice harvest right now. That is a common practice here, that we bale rice straw for winter feedings. Not the most nutritious, but it is a standby with ryegrass and some other supplements. So we're having some of that go on as fields begin to dry out. Your weather conditions, field conditions are better. We're starting to see some some rice. Rice chaff, or if you would, rice straw being baled for winter feeding. So pretty mundane in general, but we move on, and hopefully the fall gets here with some better weather and better temperatures.
Thank you. And I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but Vince just said it, and I'm just going to reiterate. So, he was talking about taking advantage of those cull cow prices, and Vince and I were at Dean Lee Research Station today, and we were working with some of the other guys to determine pregnancy in our cows. And so that's one quick way of going through and kind of figuring out who needs to stay this year and who doesn't, because who's going to give you a calf and hopefully make you some money, and who's not. So as you start planning ahead and planning forward and thinking about that, that's one pretty quick and easy way to go through and kind of make some of those determinations while you still have those good prices, instead of holding on to them, spending more money on them, and waiting until we don't know what prices are going to do, if they're not going to stay up or if they start to decline. So Lee, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for our Northwest region update.
Thank you, Ashley. Glad to be with you all today. Northwest part of the state is predominantly hot and dry. There's been some scattered showers just about every day, it seems. You see some pop-up showers, kind of relieving some of this dry weather and heat. The heat has been on for sure. Most everybody has had plenty of windows to put up some hay here in the last couple of weeks, last 3 weeks for sure. Same story, what Vince was alluding to about the worms. Any new growth we're seeing, we're just inundated with worms. They're really a problem this year, as we've been talking about. Hate to be a broken record too much. The folks that hadn't been getting any of these little pop-up showers, those that are the ones that are really dry. Talked to a guy actually earlier today that is going to consider feeding a little hay here in the next few days if we don't get any rain out of this next little event that they have forecast for us. He's missed out on a lot of the pop-up showers that several of us have had. And so pasture conditions are mixed. Still say overall pretty good, especially for this time of year. Gotten a call or two over the last week or so about Perilla Mint. And we've talked about that a lot, talked about it, I believe, on one of our Beef Brunch Educational Series. I think it's accessible through our YouTube content there, and starting to see quite a good crop of Perilla Mint, putting on flowers and so on and so forth. A lot of people have really tried to focus on some control this summer on that, especially those that have lost some cattle to it in the past. Just be aware, it's that time of year, be on the lookout on it. As Vince stated, fielding a lot of questions about ryegrass and ryegrass prices and plantings, and kind of planning out the next season and the next mode as far as our operation goes. And I want to kind of dovetail and add on to what Vince stated and what Ashley added to as well about planning and whether or not to keep some cull cows or go on and send them. I think that, the decision on these lighter spring-born calves this fall is not going to be as easily made as it has been in years past. In the past few years, going back to the last time we had a really strong market, which was 6-7 years ago, but going back in the past, in the fall time of the year on these lighter spring calves, I'm thinking anything below 500 pounds, when you get ready to wean them and get them pulled off those cows come August, September, or October, it was kind of a no-brainer. Plant your ryegrass, take advantage of that better market come around springtime. It's not that easy a decision this year. I'm not going to say what's right or wrong this year, but it's not going to be quite as easily made as in years past. due to the strength, as Vince stated, and I'm sure Jason will talk about in his market reports, is the strength of these calf prices just straight off the cows are showing in town. And you couple that with high fertilizer prices, high ryegrass prices, low potential hay stocks, depending on where you're at. It's going to make the decision to retain some of these lighter calves and graze them, or heavier calves too, a tough one for sure. And I'll wind up, Ashley, by going over something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and that's the State Fair Hay Contest, State Fair Hay Quality Contest to be specific. That's something we've done for several years, trying to showcase producers out there that really do a good job putting up quality hay, quality forages for their cattle. And we've got all the guidelines and updated rules and regulations out now. And so, Ashley, I think we should be able to post that with this video maybe. And if you need it, if you would like to enter some hay in that, I know it's funny because we talk about how poor a hay a lot of us have made, and how little or how rank the hay's been, but there has been some good hay made this year. I've talked to some folks. I know Jason's got some folks that's really knocked it out of the park, especially on some earlier cuttings. And so we want to showcase these producers, and we want to showcase the good hay that you're putting up. And of course, there are some prizes involved. So if you have any questions on it, you can ask any of us about it. Ashley, we'll get that posted somewhere. Reach out to us if you'd like to enter some samples, and I'll wrap it up with that.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. We'll post that link in the video and podcast descriptions, and then our contact information is always at the beginning of the video as well, or mine's in the podcast description if y'all have questions on that. Jason, how's it looking in the Northeast region?
We caught some much needed rainfalls over Saturday and Sunday. We had gotten pretty dry, which that wasn't all bad last week. There was a lot of hay put up last week. We actually even worked on a project with the risers here in Union Parish on putting up some sorghum Sudan. Thanks to Lee and his crew at the Hill Farm for providing a little oversight on that. Lee and them have been doing that for the last couple of years there at the Hill Farm, and he and Stephen have definitely provided a good bit of oversight on us trying to do this over here, and it's been very helpful. But had an opportunity to ride over towards the east side of the state last Friday. There's lots of dust flying from the grain trucks and the combines. They are wide open cutting some of that corn. Visiting with some of the county agents over there, those initial yields look good. That's about all I can get is a look good. So normally that's a pretty good indicator that those guys are happy with what they're seeing. And as you get into the eastern side of the Corn Belt, if you look at the national monitor, the eastern side of the Corn Belt looks really good. It's the western side of that Corn Belt that this got some pretty good struggles with drought right now. So as you look at the USDA's August World Agriculture and Supply and Demand Estimate Report, it showed 2021-2022 U.S. corn outlook with lower supplies, reduced feed and residual use, and increased food and industrial use, lower exports, and smaller ending stocks. We had really hoped that we would get a WASDE report that showed a little bit more positive for the livestock feeders, but we didn't get that. So projected beginning stocks for 21-22 were reported at 35 million bushels higher based on lower use forecast for the 2021 year. Corn production for 2021-22 is forecasted at 14.8 billion bushels. That's down 415 million bushels from the July projection. It also showed a 4.9 bushel per acre drop in the national corn yield to 174.6 bushels per acre because the industry expectations averaged 177.1. So that was what the prognosticators were expecting that national corn yield to be. December corn futures responded by trading at the highest level since we had seen in July. with Thursday's high of $5.94 a bushel. So as always, we'll continue to monitor those crop conditions and yields. Right now, everything you look at in terms of the National Drought Monitor is the eastern side of the Corn Belt's kind of balancing out the western side of the Corn Belt, because you're going to have expected really high yields on the east side, but because of drought pressure on the west side, some of those yields may be depressed. So we'll continue to monitor those closely, and any positives that we get in that next WASDE report can have pretty significant impacts on what corn futures look like. Choice box beef cutout values continued sharply higher, posting record-breaking weekly gains, and I debated on whether to put that in there or not, but they are still breaking records. They closed the week, those choice box beef cutout values closed the week $22.73 a hundredweight higher than the prior week at $311.73 a hundred. That moved the cost, moved the choice select spread. I'll spit that out in a minute. Moved the choice select spread $5 higher week over week to $23.38 a hundred. This week's fed cattle prices were firm in the South, with a few trades in Kansas at $1.25. The bulk of the sales were $1.21 to $1.22. In the North, of the bulk of the sales were $1.25 to $1.26. In the 5-area feeding region, fed steer negotiated cash sales ranged 119 to 128, which is a slight improvement from our last visit, on a confirmed 63,100 head. So futures struggled all week to have any kind of significant movement up or down. We just kind of are just kind of in a stalemate right now. The futures are waiting to see what the cash market's going to do. So there's just not a whole lot of movement right now. Those futures on fed cattle did end the week with August down 40 cents at 122.75, October down 37 at 128.12, and December down 12 cents at 133.82. And as you compare that to the beginning of the week, that was just not a whole lot of movement in that class of cattle. So 500 to 600 pound steers, medium and large, 1s and 2s. As Vince said, he was spot on. They're selling from 151 to 162. So again, those plainer type cattle are going to be on that $1.50 and less, but those higher end cattle are trading well into the $1.60s. So that's steady to $2 higher from the previous week. 700 to 800 pound feeder steers, medium and large, 1s and 2s, sold from 132 to 144. So on the low end, that's $5 lower, but on the high end, that's $2 higher from the previous week. On that same class of cattle, futures ended the week with August trading down 65 cents at 158.05, 63.07, and October up 15 cents at 165.77. Those lean coil cows on an average were 58 cents to 64 cents, which is just slightly lower compared to the previous week. Really, when I say slight, we're talking pretty slight changes there week over week. As we move into our feedstuffs, soybean meal is up $9.85 a ton at $387 a ton. Soybean hulls are steady at $155. Cottonseed meal is down $15 at $300 a ton. We did not have a report this week on whole cottonseed. Rice bran is steady at $140 a ton. Corn gluten feed meal is steady at $585 a ton. DDGs are trading up $12.50 a ton at $180, and corn is steady at $5.67 a bushel. And that's all I've got, Ashley.
All right, thank you. I will put information, so Jason talked about our Northeast Region Field Day that's coming up, Beef and Cattle Forage Field Day, Beef, Cattle, and Forage Field Day. It's a Monday. That's coming up on Thursday, September I don't remember now. Both of us are making faces for those of you that can't see it. I see your lips, but I don't hear you.
September 16th.
Thank you. So Thursday, September 16th, I'll put that information in the video and podcast description as well. And then also link, as we said earlier, the hay contest that Lee mentioned. So with that, I think that's all that we have for y'all today, and we will be back with y'all in a couple of weeks.